Now, tonight on our front, we turn our attention to the latest developments in the ninth Parliament of the Fourth Republic of Ghana. With barely 2 months into its work, the House has been plagued by controversy after controversy. Despite holding a supermajority, the current NDC leadership faces criticism for allegedly failing to assert itself, accused of yielding too easily to the NPP minority and its leader, Alexander Afenyomarkin. Later on in this conversation, to delve into these pressing concerns, I'll be joined by Deputy Majority Leader and Cape Coast South NP, Kweku Ricketts-Hagan. But first, let's speak to a member of that particular special committee investigating the chaos that erupted at the Appointments Committee on why the committee's work, as we understand it to be, was abruptly suspended. We find out whether the minority leader truly pulled out his members and barred NPP MPs from testifying. Now, good evening and welcome to you, sir, for joining us. I can also hear some commentary from others, including former Member of Parliament, in the very person of the man Andy Kwame Appiah could be pretty soon on this. Honorable Kwame Akubi, thank you so much for joining us on this one. You're welcome, sir. I'll be very glad if you could unmute, sir. Yes, Honorable, if you can hear me, sir. Andy Kwame Appiah Kubi is a former Member of Parliament for Asante Achim North. The understanding is that I should be having him on now. We will be in this conversation speaking also to Kwame Enyimadu-Entry, who is part of this special committee. But first, let me engage Andy Kwame Appiah Kubi. Honorable, you're welcome back. I hope you're doing well this evening.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm very well, thank you.
It was a committee that was set up that got the backing of 15 civil society organizations. This committee was to get to the bottom of why that particular engagement on the day of vetting turned violent, which led to tables being broken and MPs at each other's throat over whether or not to continue vetting on that particular day. The suspended ones were desuspended and their suspensions were actually taken off. But this committee's work also ended abruptly earlier today. We understand because the minority has had a change of heart. Not only are they not participating as members of the committee, they are also not in any way engaging any form or anybody as witness before this committee. What do you think about, first, the decision to set up the committee to investigate this matter, and also subsequently the decision of the minority?
Thank you very much. And let me start with the suspension, the order to suspend the 4 members of Parliament. You remember that we discussed this, and I told you that action was premature because the 4 members had not been heard and they had not responded to any inquiry. There was just this order suspending them, which appears like a sanction. And if they had not been heard, just sanctioning them ahead of proceedings was in breach of natural justice principle. And indeed, for me, if they had challenged it, which I'm sure they did, it would be annulled. And in any case, whether or not they challenged the decision, I think the Speaker subsequently vacated that order, which means that pursuant to the service of the suspension a day or so, that order suspending them has been vacated. Now, the Speaker, after suspending them, formed a committee. The committee's work was to investigate the happenings of the day and probably bring recommendations. Indeed, that should have been the beginning of proceedings, so that if the committee brought its report and its recommendations, then the Speaker will rely on that in coming out with the sanctions. But the Speaker started with sanctions. So after serving the sanctions, which was 1 day, 14 days suspension, which actually commenced on the next day. Are we sure that the order setting up the committee was not moot at that time because of the sanction?
That's an
So
interesting
the committee is
point.
supposed to investigate what happened. Yes, the committee was supposed to investigate, and it did come out with a report that will include recommendations, probably including also sanction. So if the people have served the sanction and that order had been vacated subsequently, are we not sure that the committee as said had finished its work? There was nothing more for the committee to do, because even if they finished with their report and they came out with sanctions, will those sanctions not be void ab initio because of double jeopardy rule? They couldn't be punished twice for the same offense.
Honorable, I want you to hold the line a second for me. Honorable Andy Kwame Appiah-Kubi, just give me a second. Let me bring you a member of the committee, until recently, a member of the committee, in the very person of Kwame Enyimadu-Antwi. So, you were a former member of parliament for Asante-Achim North. Let me move to the midsection. Asante-Achim Central Member of Parliament, Kwame Enyimadu-Antwi, who not long ago was chair of the Legal Parliamentary Affairs Committee of the Parliament of the Republic of Ghana. He sat on this special committee, but was part of the people that left the committee. Honorable Enyimadu-Antwi, you are welcome.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Now, let's start from this point. Tell us exactly what happened. How come the committee's work was brought to an abrupt end earlier today?
Maybe start.
Sorry, Honorable Kwame Enyimadu-Antwi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Brilliant.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I think I can hear you better now.
Yeah, I think the chairman directed. So I had gotten up, so I don't know what happened, and I cannot speak to the end of it, whether it was abrupt or I wasn't privy to how it ended.
So let's be clear. Why did you leave anyway?
I needed to discuss an issue with my caucus, the leadership of my caucus. That was the reason. I was whipped not to be part of what we're doing because we're not supposed to go public on with a committee work.
Okay, so that was the reason that this was not supposed to be...
amongst other things, but that's about what I know.
All right, but were you told prior to the start of the engagement, or it was when you were seated that you were called and told that? Because most of us watched that some of you left and never returned.
I started with that. Then I got a text message from the leadership, and I went to listen to my leadership, and I came back to inform the chair that officially I have to be out because of one or two reasons. Okay.
Now, you did mention that one of the reasons was that this hearing was not supposed to be done with a full glare of the public into it, as it was not supposed to be a public engagement. It was supposed to be in camera, if your understanding of it was right. Were there other reasons adduced for asking the minority members pull out?
I think I have to get briefing from my leadership. I haven't known the other reasons, but that's about how much I know.
You had already heard some of the people, and this matter of whether or not it was going to end up as double jeopardy has come up. At least I've heard Andy Kwame Appiah-Kubi suggest that so far as the people had commenced serving a certain form of suspension, and your committee was still sitting, it was not fair for there to be another engagement of this sort. The terms of reference...
But like I said, I have not been instructed by my leadership that it was because of the double jeopardy rule, that is why they were asking us to pull out from the committee meeting. I'm not privy to that reasoning, but I think it sounds reasonable.
Perhaps help us understand this. What was the terms of reference of this committee in the first place?
The committee was set up before yesterday, and were to conduct investigation. It was on Friday, a full-scale investigation into the happenings of the Bruha and the vetting or the appointments committee. That's it. And then prefer some recommendations. So that was the terms.
The selection of the members for this committee, was it done in consultation with the leadership, as in both minority and majority leadership? If you have any idea.
I can't answer to that, whether they were consulted or the speaker so moved to set up the committee, the members. That I cannot tell.
Now, so what does this leave us? Is it that your work is completely ended, or there's already been the communication that you may have to resume work sometime tomorrow?
If the reasons that I've given you is anything to go by, then we still have to sit and discuss it. Just that we don't have to, because other things, the chairman of the appointments committee, for instance, was cross-examined by me today. And probably that's the reason why nobody would want us to go to the public. Because why should we be shooting ourselves in the foot?
Okay. Now, have you been in any touch or contact with the Speaker of Parliament who set up this committee?
No.
Would it not have been prudent to hear from him?
Sorry?
I'm asking whether it would not have been prudent to hear from the man who constituted the committee in the first place.
No, if he's available, I can. But for instance, I spoke to the chairman to speak to the speaker. That was yesterday. And today when I asked him, he said he has spoken to him, but I wasn't there and I wouldn't be. But normally, the speaker, as a member of parliament, if I need anything, I work with the speaker straight. Otherwise, if it's anything that concerns the house or other things, he goes through the leadership of the house.
No,
we speak to him.
Yes, sir, you're making a point. You're talking about he going through the leadership of the house.
Yes, I said that if there are other things, normally he will go through the leadership of the house to get to the all other members of parliament. But if I, as a member of parliament, if I, Kwame Nkrumah, do I need anything, I can always, his office is always open, and I can walk to his office and talk to him. But I'm informed that he's not available today.
Okay. Now, there are those who have already started raising concerns that it's still something that we ought to get to the bottom of. Under what conditions are you likely to return and be part of this committee?
Have you spoken to the chairman?
No, I have not been able to reach out to him. But because you sat on the committee and we understand it is your group that pulled out, basis for which the committee could not continue with its work.
No, it wasn't my pullout that had ended the committee meeting.
Okay.
But probably among the reasons why I was brought out of the committee room could be one or among the other reasons why the committee's work ended this afternoon. Because what I've said was that I was pulled out, and among other things, the only reason that I know was that we were not supposed to go public. I overheard the speaker say something about that, but that was not very clear. But when I went in this morning, I saw some other senior members who were there. So I got confused whether the speaker's directive was for us to go public or not to go public. So if we are not, if we're going public and I'm whipped, not to continue with the proceedings to go public. I think it ends the matter, but I'm in Parliament, so when we get to when the plenary closes, I will discuss this with my leadership.
That's an interesting point. Now, many people are still asking, are the issues you were supposed to probe still necessary? Do they still require probing today as we speak?
The Speaker wanted us to come out with some recommendations going forward.
Yeah.
There are, for instance, we have the Code of Conduct of Members of Parliament. Now, if we have the recommendations, we can bring recommendations as to the cause of the disruptions in Parliament, and how we can prevent that would be very, very important going forward.
That's an interesting perspective, and I'm sure subsequently, when we know what the way forward is supposed to be, we'll sure be engaging you further on this matter. I am grateful to you for your time this evening. The Honorable Kwame Enyimedu is the Member of Parliament of Asante Achim Central, who joined for some understanding, and he was a member of that special committee that was probing the chaos that happened during the vetting of some ministers and the earlier developments today that indicated that the Parliament of the Republic of Ghana, its work had come to an end, especially this committee that was probing it, because minority members pulled out. In fact, he's been explaining that it was primarily, he was called out because apparently they were not supposed to do a public, what they call a committee sitting. But that appears to have been what happened, and we also saw some of the members of Parliament, including the chairman of the Appointments Committee, appearing before this committee. I still have the Honorable Andy Kwame Appiah-Kubiso from Asante Achim Central. I'm going to the former member of Parliament of Asante Achim North in the very person of Andy Kwame Appiah-Kubi. Honorable Andy Kwame Appiah-Kubi, does it make sense to you, the explanation that this was not supposed to be a public show, and yet one way or the other I ended up there? That's why it needed to be ended for it to be recalibrated. This is separate from the concerns that have been raised by the minority.
Yes, I didn't hear the speaker say that the committee was to sit in camera. So it was an ordinary special committee to investigate the happenings at the Appointments Committee. And therefore, my expectation would have been that they would sit in public. And indeed, what happened in Parliament on the day is something of public concern. So I wouldn't imagine why the matter of investigating what happened in open public would be held in camera. So I don't agree, I don't understand that. And assuming it was a caveat that came after the ruling that it be held in camera, who would have to arrange the in-camera meeting? It will be the work of Parliament. So if the parliamentary administrative system set up a hearing in public, who would you blame? The members of the committee will avail themselves the opportunity to contribute to the discussions there. But the platform had to be created by Parliament through its administrative work. So I don't even understand why the stage was set for a public hearing if the order was for the hearing to be held in camera. And I don't even understand why something that happened in public ought to be held in camera anyway. But as I started saying, what was the essence of this committee work? The committee work was to investigate the causes of the brouhaha and obviously recommendations as to how to prevent the reoccurrence and probably sanctions for culprits in that misbehavior. But given as it became, the speaker was too much in a hurry to pronounce sentence before people had been heard. and the sentence had effect, and the targets or the people who were affected served part of the sentence, albeit that the order was vacated probably this morning or yesterday, after they had served part of the sentence. And my position was that, having served part of the sentence, if the members were to be investigated again and punishment or sentences preferred and adopted by the House, it will amount to double jeopardy, and therefore the sanction will be ineffective or be void at that point. Nevertheless, it will still be necessary for the investigation to have concluded, for us to understand why it happened, and to make suggestions as to how to prevent less the sanctions. That would be a necessary conclusion. Recommendations to abate the happening in future. Now, the lessons we learn from this is that the Speaker ought to take sentiment out of his rulings and his deliberations. In fact, the sanction as given by the Speaker was premature, and that appears to have taken the wind out of the sail. Number two is that notwithstanding the confusion in Parliament in terms of the deliberations in respect of the happenings at the appointment committee, if there is anything criminal by way of anybody's action, that cannot be insulated from prosecution, because Article 123 of the Constitution says that notwithstanding any administrative or parliamentary deliberations, criminal acts in the course of the happenings in Parliament would be subjected to criminal proceeding. And the Speaker made reference to the police in respect to what happened. I don't know whether the criminal act or the civil act, because if it was a criminal act, criminal proceeding is for a person who may have suffered and or who may have done something criminal. And the lawyers will say it's an action in persona. And therefore, if it is criminal proceedings that the Speaker expected, where is the Speaker's locus in the report to the police beyond just reporting to be probably a witness? And in criminal proceedings, the complainant is very important in the prosecution process. And if somebody who may have suffered a criminal action is not prepared to prosecute the matter, how can the prosecution prepare its case and even prosecute effectively? It will not be possible. So I would have thought that some of the people who've suffered pain may have to go to the police to make a complaint of assault, for the police to commence investigation and probably subsequent prosecution. Lies ill in the mouth of somebody who was not even there to become a witness, somebody who may have heard what happened, to invoke the powers of the police to commence any investigation and subsequent prosecution. Because whatever he would have told the police would not qualify as evidence because of the hearsay rule. So, again, the Speaker couldn't have been the person to invoke the powers of the police to commence any proceedings in criminal procedure. And on top of it,
to be fair, the Speaker had instructed the clerk to report the matter to the police. Could it not be that he was reporting destruction of public property, rather, not the brawl that happened between some MPs? and that what was deemed to be criminal and warranted criminal investigation was a destruction of public property?
I would have thought that if anybody destroyed anything of anybody's, that could also take a civil procedure to investigate it and to be compensated by way of damages. So if somebody destroys something of mine, I would want to sue him and then get the court to give me some declaration that will bring me the relief that I want. But if somebody destroyed a property of mine and I reported to the police, well, maybe we may be investigating the criminal mind, but that will not bring me a restitutive solution. So at the end of a criminal trial in this matter, where property has been destroyed by somebody, that property belongs to me. At the end of the day, if the person is discharged for whatever reason, lack of evidence or failure of prosecution or delays or inadequate evidence, what will happen? I will be left with empty hands. But the better approach probably will be a civil suit that will bring me damages if I am successful. So even there, I don't know what results the Speaker wanted when he referred the matter to the police. And I have explained the criminal procedure and the results of the criminal proceedings, the expected results, whether we won or lost a criminal action. If we won the criminal action, how restricted, how are we going to be compensated by criminal sanctions? And if we prosecuted a civil action and we were successful, we would be compensated by damages so that we will be restored to the position before the destruction. So I'm saying that either way, we probably didn't have any much to do with the police, because if people were not reporting situations of assault, and if somebody was reporting for destruction of property, we would not be better off than somebody who will go through civil procedure to seek justice and consequential damages. So I would have thought that. So in effect, if we are not sure, because of the speed at which the Speaker passed sentence, we may be lost of all the restitutive measures that any institution could bring. So the Speaker's action of suspending the members of Parliament was premature.
Now, that's also an interesting point, because this same action was not protested. Indeed, outside, the minority protested against the decision. Then when Afenimaki went into the chamber, he was pleading with the Speaker to suspend or to vary the suspension that he had given to the members of Parliament. Is it strange that the man who had just pleaded for clemency is the same man withdrawing his members from the committee, getting to the bottom of the matter?
Indeed, when Speaker pronounced the suspension, I'm not sure the minority leader was there. He wasn't there. And what the prescription I gave you when we started talking about it was that they should come in with a motion in Parliament to challenge the ruling of the Speaker and the sanction as pronounced by the Speaker because of the Odi Otaram rule that they had not been heard. And therefore, withdraw the sanction as pronounced and go through the procedure appropriately by way of forming a committee for the committee to hear the persons involved, and the committee bring its decisions to the court, to the chamber. So that was my initial prescription.
Okay.
But minority leader decided to go in with a prayer that the speaker withdraws the sanctions, and was supported by the majority leader. So either way, sanctions had been withdrawn, either through a motion or through the prayer. It was withdrawn.
Okay.
But let us also not forget that the sanction had been effective from the time that it was passed. And therefore, people have served part of the sanction. So we cannot just write it away or wish it away that it didn't happen. It did. And people had suffered the sanction. And therefore, at the tail end of it, we can only come out with recommendations as to how to prevent the reoccurrence, but definitely not sanctions against the parties, again, because of the double jeopardy rule.
All right. Now, please hold on a second for me. I've been joined by a former member of parliament, Inu Safuseni, too. He's also a former minister anyway. But Honorable Inu Safuseni, this was supposed to be the committee that will get to the bottom of the matter, but it's already hit a snag. Some are saying it's because of the fact that it was held in public with the Ghanaian people watching it live. Others are saying it was because the minority had pulled out their members on the committee and instructed all of their members not to appear before this same committee. First, was this committee absolutely necessary in the first place? And what do you think about the decisions of the various groups subsequently?
Well, a committee, let me put it this way, a committee to investigate the conduct of the rogue members of parliament at the appointment committee sitting on the 30th January is necessary.
Okay.
But whether that should be an ad hoc committee or a committee of parliament on privileges and immunities is another matter. I am of the view that the committee properly sees with jurisdiction to look into the conduct of members of parliament is the Privileges and Immunities Committee of Parliament. Because therein lies the principle of peer review, that as a body of parliament, there is consensus that only members of parliament can peer review the conduct of their fellow members of parliament or colleague members of parliament and sanction them appropriately. So it beats my mind why committees, the standing committees of parliament and the select committees of parliament have not been formed 1 month after the beginning of the tenure of this 9th parliament. I had thought that consequent upon what happened on the 30th, Parliament would have moved swiftly to establish all these committees, and a member of Parliament would raise the motion of breach of privileges by those who were engaged in that heinous act, and then a referral will be made to the Committee on Privileges and Immunities. That having not been made, I also fail to see the power of the Speaker to so motu establish a committee to investigate this matter. Because ad hoc committees must be formed by Parliament, and Parliament, qua Parliament, is when members of parliament or a member of parliament moves a motion for the establishment of an ad hoc committee to investigate a matter touching and concerning the public or parliament or any special matter, which motion will be supported by members of parliament and the committees established with names agreed by the members of parliament. I do not see anywhere in the standing orders which gives power to the speaker to establish a committee.
No, that's an interesting perspective there, because then you are basically saying this committee had no basis in the first place, and that the establishment so moto by the speaker was in and of itself something that you wouldn't support any day. But the committee was established. It started work. It has heard from some members of parliament, including Deputy Speaker Bernard Ahiafo, who chaired the appointments committee. Then it was abruptly ended. Two directions, we are told. The chairman of the committee himself, Emmanuel Bajor, says the clerk of parliament instructed the committee to suspend until it gets further instructions from the speaker. It is a view, as I heard Kwame Enyimadu say, when he was pulled out of that engagement, he was told this was not supposed to be a public engagement. And so there wasn't a need to go to it until that is rectified. The minority says our members cannot be until some issues are resolved. And they cannot only sit on the committee, but also they are stopped from participating or appearing before the committee as witnesses. Are these steps in the right direction, even as they are deemed to be remedial of the mistake of a public hearing?
Yeah, that is parliament for you. You cannot predict how parliament will behave in any given circumstance, can you?
Interesting, not at all.
So that is parliament for you. Now, first of all, I think that Afenyo Markin has dealt a fatal blow to the committee. Now, by withdrawing members of his group, the caucus, from participation in the work of the committee, he has attacked the legitimacy of the committee and whatever findings that is going to come out of it. Now, I also had heard earlier that in view of the sensitive nature of what happened at the appointment committee sitting on the 30th of January, the committee was to sit in camera. I have not had any communication or read any communication that that decision which was made that the committee sits in camera has been changed to a public sitting. So, again, because of the controversies surrounding the work of the committee, one can understand why the clerk to parliament intervened to stop the process until further clarifications are sought from the speaker.
But can an incident that happened in public be investigated as a secret matter?
No, so you must understand. So when we are talking about parliament, we are talking about the rules and procedure of parliament.
True.
So all parliamentary meetings, parliamentary sittings of committees are public sittings.
Yeah.
Or public meetings, except where the exigencies of the situation requires that this.
Well, I seem to have had an interruption to the line to Inus Afuseni there, and he was making a point and justifying why there was a need for this committee to sit in camera, i.e. keep the rest of us in this country out of the conversations and the people that appeared before it. But early on, we had some seasoned members of parliament appearing before the committee. We had seen there ministers and former, even the minister current for roads and highways was there. We also had seen the first deputy speaker who chairs the appointments committee of parliament appearing before this same committee. We have seen others equally being made members. Okay, I understand that I have Inus Afuseni, former member of parliament for Tamale Central and a doyen of Ghana's parliamentary practice on the line there. You were making the point about whether or not it is justified for this committee's work to be done in camera, i.e. we the people of the Republic of Ghana cannot see and hear whoever appears before them and what they say before these committees.
So I was saying that all parliamentary sittings, whether in the plenary or at committee level, are prima facie supposed to be sat in public or held in public, except where the exigencies of the situation require that they sit in camera. Now, and what is the exigencies of the situation? Will a member of parliament who appears before the committee to give evidence against a fellow member of parliament be protected? Do you want to know who said what at the committee?
But has that...
Or those appearing before the committee be cowed when they are good to give evidence in public?
But really, is that not water under the bridge? We've heard from even better placed people like the First Deputy Speaker explaining how incidents happen, who said what they said in their local dialect, and that erupted into what happened at the end of the day. Is that not too late a time to interrupt because you feel something very sensitive might have been said or may have been said?
Raymond.
Yes, sir.
You have come to this conclusion because you are thinking that no evidence will be more sensitive than the evidence already given by the chairman. Not so?
Not necessarily, but I'm saying that there's a lot of water under the bridge anyway.
Yeah, so I thought, and I supported the view that it should be in camera.
Okay.
Because even minority members of parliament, if it is to be in camera, will give evidence that can go to show how the whole thing came about. But in public, they might be betraying their party.
Oh, I see. All right. Now, I get your point, but I need to bring in Andy Appiah-Kubi on this point. I know you had said earlier on that you do not get the point in a public incident having a probe that's happening in secret, but the justification given here is the sensitivity and the potential that some may not be able to open up as well as they ought to do so. Does that now change your mind about the in-camera request around this particular meeting?
It doesn't change my mind at all.
Okay.
I believe that something that is of public interest ought to be done in public for the purpose of transparency and for the purpose of public knowledge, public education. Indeed, when Parliament wants to do a hearing that on an issue that happened in public, in camera, then what Parliament seeks to do is that we go in there and see a situation of patting each other on the back and not responding to the issues as expected by the public. I don't think that is right. And I don't also support the idea that a poor parliamentarian, having been elected by a constituency to come and represent them, will submit to fear of sanction from a political party. And don't forget, the oath of office is oath of allegiance to Ghana, not oath of allegiance to a political party. So if the public is interested in the matter, and if we want to go to the bottom of it, and if we want to show our capacity as representing constituencies and not submitting to parliamentary authority over members of parliament, partisan authority over members of parliament, I think it must be shown in public. And let us show to the public also that we represent them. And therefore, we are going to be truthful to the health and not be intimidated by any possible sanctions. In fact, we should move away from the fear of punishment or sentiment from groupies into exerting the independence of Parliament. As a parliamentarian, you have been invited to provide evidence. Why are you afraid of a group of people who are not in Parliament? And therefore, you think that you want to be shielded so that the proceedings are held in camera. I don't think that is fair on the public. I don't think that is fair on the people that elected you.
Which of these?
Because the thing happened in the full glare of the public.
Honorable Apiakubi, which of these engenders a lot of public trust? A public sitting and hearing, or one that is done in camera and the results brought out? Which one engenders public trust?
The people themselves, the public, will follow the proceedings, and therefore will want to reconcile the belief systems, the positions, as they know it, with the results through the recommendations. So it is important that transparency is considered in some of these. The moment you go into camera, the perception is that you don't want people to tell the truth. You want to manufacture a report and bring it here. You want to also hide some secrets. You want to shield some people from even giving evidence. That is not fair. And again, if it happens like that, the people will take the results of the investigation with some suspicion. So it's important that if we want to get to the bottom of it, if we want to assert the independence of Parliament, if we want to be transparent with the public, if we want to really uproot that which happened, which the public has shown its disdain, let it so be that the public will be part of the proceedings. And indeed, most of the citizens of Parliament are held in public. And therefore, the committee's work is also part of the parliamentary work. So why would we want to shield it if it doesn't bother on state secrecy, state security, and the like? This is something that the public is interested in. I strongly believe that let the men who are invited before the committee show that they are men of substance and of integrity and of conviction, and show us how independent they are from other groupings outside Parliament.
Now, let me bring in Honorable Feni. I mean, moving forward on this matter.
Well, that is the position my senior has taken. He's entitled to his opinion, but I'm also saying that the public hearing will enable the public to follow proceedings and be acceptable as it comes at the end of the day. Because come to think of it, the decision that comes from the committee is going to be accepted and reconciled with the belief of the public.
Okay. Well, that's an interesting point. But Honorable going forward, what do we do to this committee? Should its work end? Do we still need a committee to go into the issues originally tabled as relevant and important to get into the bottom of the matter? Or it's just really much ado about nothing?
Well, first of all, let me assure my brother, friend, and colleague, Andy Apiakubi, that not everybody is Apiakubi.
I don't even understand what you mean by that.
And so, not everybody can be bold and fearless. Like UFM says, bold and fearless.
And independent.
And independent, like Andy Apiakubi. That's the first thing. The second thing is that we have all been in this country, not so.
Certainly.
When Apia Ofori decided to be bold, fearless, and independent, and we saw the consequences, not so.
Certainly.
Certainly. So you can't wish away this history. Now, let me come to the substantive issue. You see, what has happened is unacceptable. Time doesn't run against the commission of a crime. This matter ought to be investigated. Those members of Parliament who exhibited these unparliamentary behavior all to be called out and sanctioned. To do that, Parliament must move swiftly to establish the relevant committees, standing committees, and select committees, and charge them to work. Then a motion for contempt of Parliament or breach of privileges can then be moved against these members of Parliament who exhibited that unruly conduct at the Appointments Committee's sitting. And then that committee then investigates them, then takes evidence and comes out with its recommendations and presents a report to Parliament, and Parliament will take a decision on that. That's the way to go. That's parliamentary. That's respecting the standard orders of Parliament. That's respecting the procedure, principles, rules, conventions of Parliament. What has brought us to this point is the usurpation of the dictates and precepts of the standing orders and creating an institution that appears not to have found a place in the standing orders.
Well, that's an interesting point. Let me take the final words from you and the Kwame Appiah-Kubi. Do you agree with the formula for resolving the problem as proposed by Yunus Afuseni?
Well, his proposition will be a little different from mine because I think that we need to ensure that when Parliament resumes, we should think that the old Parliament is gone and this is a fresh Parliament. And people ought to be given the necessary orientation for them to understand the parliamentary procedures and also the code of conduct and the possible sanctions upon breach of such conduct, such code. Number two is that there must be peer review of members by which we will have periodic report of conduct of members. And also there must be a grading system of performance of members. And therefore, we will keep glued to the standard system as established by the statutes of Parliament. We need to do an amendment of the parliamentary statutes standing order to include the code of conduct and also the sanction system in the event of breaches. I think that we must take the work of Parliament seriously. And indeed, if I had my way, and if there was a need to amend the Constitution, we should look at qualification into Parliament and let it be a little bit more stringent than it is, because it's very loose now and anybody can come to Parliament. And like I told you the last time, let us also work to demonetize the processes of selection of membership of Parliament so that we will have the people that will be adequately qualified to come to Parliament. Because as it is, we can get people who are untrainable, who will come to Parliament and cannot respond to any training at all. And that it is the Parliament and the people of Ghana that suffers.
Well, I'm grateful to you, gentlemen, for joining me this evening, and the Kwame Appiah-Kubi and also Yunus Afuseni. Early on, Kwame and Yumedu Nchi also joined this conversation. Many thanks to you also for watching today's edition of UPfront.